welcome to a special time-warped episode of Kapow where we are all about the 80s. I'm Sonya.
And I'm Al, and yes, we are here in King's Comics tonight to pay homage to that decade when Michael Jackson released not only Thriller, but also Bad, the decade when VHS finally defeated Betamax, and the decade when neon became a valid fashion choice.
There is a lot to get through today. We'll be looking at some of the biggest comic hits of the 1980s, as well as titles featuring 80s characters who are still going strong today.
We'll also be having a chat with Quinny and Anthony about Event Cinema's In the House Retro Movie Festival, which is bringing some of my all-time favourites back to the big screen.
And I'm honestly not sure what Ray's looking at. He just keeps wandering about muttering, how can they not recognise him just because of the outfit? So, I don't know, maybe it's something Superman.
Well, it's hard to tell with Ray, but he did promise to stay on theme this time, so fingers crossed. Now, we should get on with it before your hair starts to deflate.
Yeah, I know, seriously, 20 minutes and 3 cans of hairspray for this.
I'm starting to see why the 80s was when we first heard about global warming. When you think of that turbulent decade known as the 80s, it's hard to decide what was the most important event or image.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much going on. You had the fall of the Berlin Wall, you had the invention of the Post-it, and of course there was this.
But despite all of those monumental events, it is the comics of the 80s that we've decided to focus on today, since they were obviously the most important thing to happen.
That and that we're a comic book review show.
Yeah.
Now, we obviously don't have enough time to look at every title released between 1980 and 1989.
Not quite.
No.
Yeah.
So instead, we decided to focus on a few creators who we believe released some of their best work during that decade.
Yes, beginning with multi-award-winning writer, magician, and Rasputin lookalike, Mr. Alan Moore. Now, in the early 80s, Moore was working as a freelance writer for several publications such as 2000 AD and the anthology magazine Warrior. It was in Warrior that he began the fantastic series V for Vendetta, the story of a masked anarchist resorting to terrorist acts in an effort to undermine the fascist British government of a post-nuclear future. Unfortunately, Warrior was cancelled before V could be completed.
Yeah, thankfully, though, the title was reprinted in colour and completed in 1988 under the DC Vertigo imprint. DC brought Moore on staff largely due to the success of his work for 2000 AD, such as The Ballad of Halo Jones. His first assignment was revamping the Swamp Thing series, until then a by-the-numbers monster comic, which he turned around and used to introduce new characters, such as John Constantine.
Moore was also responsible for defining moments in the careers of both Superman, with Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and Batman, with The Killing Joke. For me, though, the pinnacle of his DC career was with the outstanding Watchmen series.
Long before Kick-Ass hit the shelves, Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen series showed us what the world would be like if regular men and women pulled on a pair of tights and started punching bad guys. Filled to the brim with Moore's trademark dark wit and socio-political commentary, Watchmen is one of the greatest comic book series.
Absolutely. Now, moving along, we come to a creator who is beloved of Batman fans the world over, having done more to define the Dark Knight as we know him today than just about anyone else, the legendary Frank Miller.
Starting off as a fill-in artist for various projects, Miller got his first regular gig penciling for the bi-monthly Daredevil title, which at the time was a poor seller with a low-profile hero. However, within 3 issues of Miller taking over as writer, the title went from bi-monthly to monthly, and Matt Murdock was well on his way to becoming one of Marvel's most popular characters.
Inspired by his research into martial arts and samurai ethics for Daredevil, Miller wrote and penciled his first creator-owned title, Ronin, in 1983. Ronin is the story of a masterless samurai, reincarnated 8 centuries after his death to battle again in a dystopian future New York. The title was published by DC and was a huge success.
And not his last success with DC either. With the game-changing Dark Knight Returns, Miller gave us a look into Batman's possible future, donning the cowl in his mid-50s after a decade in retirement. Then Miller jumped back in time to the start of Bruce Wayne's vigilante career with Batman Year One, retconning his origin story to fit in with details from The Dark Knight Returns, and effectively bookending the Batman legend.
Both books remain massive sellers today, and will feature in just about every top 5 Batman books list you're ever likely to find, including our own.
Yeah. Now, you know, seeing as how we're discussing the influential comics of the 80s, it would be an absolute crime if we didn't mention the first and so far only graphic novel ever to win a Pulitzer Prize. Written by Art Spiegelman, Mouse, A Survivor's Tale is a heart-rendingly personal story about the Holocaust that makes use of anthropomorphic characters to bring home the tragedy in a way that has never been experienced before. It also changed what we thought was possible within the comic medium.
Which is what was so amazing about comics in the 80s. You know, there was a new direction to these stories, a tone that was edgy and adult. Creators like Moore, Miller and Spiegelman, just to name a few, were trailblazers who opened a door to the kind of high-concept storytelling that we enjoy today.
Yeah, of course, there was a bit of a backlash towards the end of the 80s, with both Miller and Moore, among others, leaving DC over disputes regarding censorship.
Yeah, but that's a tale for another time. Possibly in a special where we focus on the 90s.
Ooh, what would you wear for that?
I'm thinking head to toe in denim.
Nice.
Timberlake
nice,
style.
Yeah. No, I'd go like a really oversized paisley sweater. No, a hypercolour t-shirt.
Now that is fashion.
Hey, Ray.
Hey, Sonya. Hey, guys.
Welcome to the 80s.
Thank you. It's great to be here. The 80s was probably the golden era of cartoons, or at least it was for guys, I reckon, except for She-Ra.
Ah, yes, the Princess of Power. She was actually one of the very first strong female protagonists in cartoons.
Yeah, and remains so today, too.
Yeah,
I
she's
think.
awesome.
Yeah, but she came about by a very popular earlier series. Now, if you don't know what we're talking about yet, we're talking about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
You just had to, didn't you, Ray?
Yeah, I had to. Now, for those of you who may not know, He-Man is the alter ego of Prince Adam and is the principal character of several comic books and animated series whose power lies in superhuman strength. He-Man and his friends attempt to defend the realm of Eternia and the secrets of Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor. Celebrating this series is a new quarter-scale range released by Pop Culture Shock Collectables. Now today we have the Beastman and He-Man figures to review. Both of them are sculpted out of polystone and are individually hand-painted.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's start with Beastman.
Great. He's arguably the most recognisable of Skeletor's henchmen, and this is an excellent likeness to the character. The stance is aggressive and his face full of menace. The sculpt is nice and clean. And the focus is clearly on maintaining the smooth lines that reflect the cartoon series.
Yeah, and the paintwork on him is fantastic. I love the vibrancy of his blood orange skin and mane. The detail in the base is a nice contrast to that of the simpler form of the figure, which really makes him pop.
I'm also glad that the head sculpt doesn't feature any of the characters snivelling that's present in the series as well. Otherwise, I think that would kind of weaken the overall, impact of the sculpt. Now, let's move on to the hero piece. He-Man is poised sword high in his summoning position, having just transformed from Adam. There's detail in the sculpt, but the smoother lines and rounded edges give a softer presence. Again, there's an excellent likeness to the animated character.
Absolutely, and the paintwork on this one, again, flawless. He-Man's base resembles the lower jaw of Castle Grayskull, which is a nice touch. The head sculpt is true to the character, sporting his infamous golden man bob.
Such princely hair! It's worth mentioning at this point that while many companies are trying to outdo each other to produce higher-end product all the time, it goes to show that by focusing on the essence of the character, you can still achieve that excellence through a simpler sculpt. This is something that Pop Culture Shock do really well. If you want another example, check out their Street Fighter range.
Awesome. So what do you think of these collectibles overall, Ray?
Well, typically, funnily enough, I'm drawn towards the higher detailed sculpts. Generally, those who are steeped in a little bit more of a realism as opposed to this animated style. But don't discount these figures at all. In fact, quite the opposite. I don't dislike these figures at all. What I like best about these sculpts is that they capture the simplicity of the animated character design and fashion them in such a way that they're also an homage to the awesome toy line. Overall, it's a really nice fusion. I'm giving them both a buy. If you're a serious fan or collector, I don't think there's anything better out there on the market quite like these.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also love how balanced they are in both shape and scale. And you're right, they just look like toys that have come to life.
Oh, yeah.
They're very cool. I'm giving them a buy as well.
I have
No, you don't, Ray.
I have
No. Hand it.
I have something in my eye.
Since we're talking about everything 80s today, we've got to remember that the 80s were a time when we got some of our greatest cult films coming out. And because of that, that's why we've got Quinny and Anthony here from In the House through Event Cinemas. Thanks for coming along, guys.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us, man.
Now, can you tell us a bit about In the House?
In the House is at Event Cinemas George Street. It could be your house, it could be Quinny's house. So what we do is we deck the cinema up as if you were in someone's lounge room. So we have carpet, couches, coffee tables, lights, furniture holders, you name it, we've got it. And we've created it so when people walk into the cinema, it's an experience that they're having. They're invited into our house, and there's a real familiarity that's happening with that concept. So it's just not the cinema door opening, but come in and have a good time, and you're in our house and take your shoes off and relax and have a good time as if you were.
We actually don't like them taking their shoes off, though, because that's really...
Well, I've seen people
smell.
do it.
Yeah.
Things do happen. A lot of strange things do happen because it is a house.
That is
someone's
true.
house,
Sure, yeah.
You know,
So you're tapping into that community element, sort of making people feel at home.
Yeah.
experience.
Well, it's like that whole thing that you used to watch movies with your mates, and then, you'd have somebody who'd seen the film heaps of times, and they'd be able to tell you something more about the film.
Yeah.
Or somebody had read something on IMDb, and they just wanted to tell you about it, and it enriches the experience of watching the film, because suddenly it's not just I'm sitting here in a cinema with people that I don't know. I'm sitting here with a bunch of my mates, and we're going to watch this film that we probably have seen on DVD, but now we're watching it on the biggest screen that we can.
Yeah.
But afterwards, I'm going to talk to somebody about it.
And they're talking. It's talking beforehand as well.
Yeah.
So Quinny and Jabba from Channel 7 will be there as well, and they'll talk for about 15 minutes before the session and engage with the audience. So everyone's already involved before the cinema started. So
Yeah, we run competitions. There's fun.
We play hands on heads, tails, you name it. We play it.
So what are some of the films that you've got coming up for this round of them?
We're really excited about our next one. So Taxi Driver's our next one. So we're really going a classic. Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro, Paul Schrader. I mean, film
And
icons.
4K.
And in 4K. So
Yeah,
can't see
which
it
is
better.
going to be amazing. I mean,
Absolutely.
There's going to be so many people coming in who've obviously never seen that on the big screen before. That's going to be an amazing experience.
And having said that, we do get a lot of people that turn up, and we do a red carpet event. We take photos and we film every session.
Yep.
And people say, "Hey, 12 years ago I wanted to see this, but I was too young." Or 16 years ago. To see those people come to go, "Hey, man, it's so good that we can see this on the big screen," is really thrilling and exciting for us. It just really enriches the experience for all of us.
Yeah, we've got another one coming up, Little Shop of Horrors, one of my favourite
Fantastic.
musicals of all time.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that we can find a singing plant.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
And it is
Walk
possible.
around the botanical gardens, see what you can find.
Yeah.
We should think of us people to bring their pot plants, actually.
Why not? Let's do that.
Something we could do.
That could be weird.
There seems to be a lot of freedom to what you're doing here, though. Which is very cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our Fifth Element we're very excited about.
yeah.
That's our closing
Fantastic.
closing season.
Yeah.
And that's in VMAX. So
Superb.
you can't see it in a better cinema, better
Yeah,
sound.
of course.
It's going to be extraordinary. So
So there's some fantastic ones coming up.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about cult films is, as you say, they're not always that huge when they start off. A lot of those came out of the 80s for some reason or another. Why do you think it was that the 80s was such a hotbed for these films that just stayed with us and gained such a huge following?
Well, my theory on it is that the 80s were basically the peak of when we'd been doing special effects for, however many years, analog.
Sure.
It was just before we kicked over into the digital revolution, before CGI took over, and suddenly we were trying to tell stories that we could do anything.
Yeah.
In the 80s, we were still working on, we can do that, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
So we're going to tell the best story that we can with the limitations. And I think limitations are really important.
Absolutely.
But because of that, you get films that are about ideas, and they're about characters, and they're about the best that you can possibly do of traditional filmmaking before you can take the shortcut.
Well, it brought an era of filmmakers out. It was like, it's a
Absolutely.
new toy to play with. So
Yeah.
they're really excited. Hey, there's something I can do. The James Camerons, they're coming out. I want to try this. You know.
Yeah, well, and also that's a generation that's been brought up on cinema and have seen what the filmmakers of the 50s and the 60s have done.
Yeah.
And now they're going, okay, we've got all of this, technology that is great. Let's tell the best stories that we can.
Yeah.
Like 1984 is possibly the greatest movie year ever.
Some amazing films did come out that year.
Yeah, you've got Ghostbusters, you've got Neverending Story, you've got Gremlins, you've got Beverly Hills Cop. All of these films that basically defined what cinema was. And for me, as a 6-year-old in 1984, my mind exploded.
Yeah.
Because suddenly there was just world after world after world of fantasy, of science fiction, of everything. Like, you got Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom happening at the same time as like Gremlins.
Yeah.
You know, so many weird things, but at the same time, anything could happen.
Yeah.
And that's at anything, it's that whole escapist thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They is really experimenting with escapism, so you're off into God knows where, planets and all over the place.
Yeah, well, a couple of years later, I remember going to see The Princess Bride in the cinema when I was a little kid, and it was amazing, you know? And that's still one of my favourite films. I'll still trot that out every couple of months. I'll watch that.
Yeah, well, your hat, okay?
Yes.
You know, we're talking Back to the Future Part 2. What year is it this year? 2015.
When he was going to?
Yes,
Yes.
that hat is now...
Where is my hoverboard? That's what I want to know.
Well, the hoverboard does kind of exist, but I believe Nike is actually bringing out those shoes with the power laces
Fantastic.
by the end of this year.
Pepsi had better have those fancy bottles as well.
Yeah, I'm less keen about
Yeah,
that.
I'm not a big Pepsi guy, but it would still be a nice thing to have on the show.
I would like that.
Yeah. Now, where can people find out more about In the House?
Event Cinemas George Street, we have it.
There,
Fantastic.
good thing.
Cinemas
Yep,
George Street, there
right
you go.
there.
If you go to our website, you'll be able to book tickets. There's a banner there, takes you straight to the In the House page. You can also go to our In the House Facebook page. And we really want to hear what people want to see. So we're asking the audience every session, tell us what you want to see. And we've had some amazing posts, and it goes in the mix.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we want to put on what you want to see. So you want to see a film, you come into my house, you're a friend of mine, we'll put it in the mix and we might put it on. So if the demand's there, you know, we're all for it. So.
I have been desperately asking for Highlander.
We almost did.
See, everyone does that.
Is he on board with that?
It was almost in the mix for this season. I think season 3. I think we're looking pretty good. I think we're looking good
Because they're looking to bring out a remake soon. I think Dave Bautista's going to be.
I've heard that, the Kurgan.
He's going to be
which
playing
I'm just
Kurgan.
like, what?
Yeah,
But
it'd be interesting.
I used to be like, oh, Dave Bautista. Now I'm like, Dave Bautista?
Yeah.
He was cool in that film. Yeah.
So, look, guys, thank you so much for coming along. It's been great
welcome.
talking movies with you.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll have an amazingly successful In the House season.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
That's been awesome. Cheers.
Thank you.
We're far enough away from the 80s now that we can view it as the decade we've left behind. But there are still some things from the 80s that are with us, and some things that just lay dormant, waiting to pop up like a time capsule filled with leg warmers, Sony Walkmans, and Frankie Says Relax t-shirts.
Is it Walkmans or Walkmen?
It's one of the great mysteries left to us by the 80s.
And another thing left to us by the 80s is a huge number of popular characters, most of which were designed specifically to sell action figures. And yet, most of them continue to be popular today, with ongoing comic titles and fresh new adventures.
And the granddaddy of them all has got to be the real American hero, G.I. Joe.
Yo, Joe!
Thank you.
Had to.
This Marvel comic began in 1981, and the Joes have been duking it out with Cobra ever since. Yes, pun intended.
But times have changed, and in Volume 1 of G.I. Joe Homefront, written by Fred Van Lente with art by Steve Kurth, the Joes have been put under the media spotlight for the first time. No longer able to work in secret, they have to worry about things like bad publicity and effective marketing in between covert assault missions. It's an interesting direction to take the story, and it cleverly mirrors the title's real-life efforts to remain contemporary and relevant.
It does sometimes feel like an awkward fit, though. The tongue-in-cheek humour starts well, with Shipwreck complaining about his outfit making him look like a cartoon duck, but swiftly becomes laboured and a little desperate. For example, the inclusion of a perky young social media officer codenamed Hashtag was a low point of this volume for me.
It was a bit hit and miss
Yep.
as far as the humour went, and I also had some issues with the pacing, but I do appreciate a lot of what this comic is trying to do in terms of modernisation. And I think Kurth did a good job on the artwork.
Yes, I agree with you there, yep.
So I'm going to give it a borrow.
Cool, well, I didn't enjoy this one quite so much. I felt like it never figured out what it wanted to be. There was self-awareness running headlong into tired macho cliches and jokes that just didn't land. I'm going to give it a berry.
Fair enough. Well, now we'll move on to another hero who is synonymous with action figures, accessories sold separately. Issue 1 of He-Man The Eternity War drops us right in the middle of an Eternia in direst peril. Hordak's evil horde has invaded the planet, taken over Castle Grayskull, and driven the Resistance back to the last place you would ever expect. Skeletor's former base of operations, Snake Mountain.
And if none of this made a lick of sense to you, then this is probably not the comic you're looking for. Although this first issue does go to pains to provide exposition, it's still probably only going to appeal to true He-Man fans. Luckily, I happen to be one of those fans, and I really loved it. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of this. It's a buy from me.
Yeah, I think Dan Abnett is onto something with the darker, grittier tone of this story, while Pop Munn is largely staying true to the classic character models, but isn't afraid to go larger than life or delve into the grotesque. I'm interested to see where this title goes. I'm going to give it a buy as well.
Awesome, and as it is just not the 80s without big hair and a shiny outfit, we come to Red Sonya. Written by Gail Simone with art by Walter Giovanni, issue 13 of Red Sonya marks the beginning of a new story arc for the she-devil with a sword that will put her up to her neck in magic, mystery, and long-delayed revenge.
I'm a fan of Simone's writing, particularly for Red Sonya, but I found some of the dialogue in this issue to be a little stilted. Not so much that it became a problem, just slightly off in the rhythm. With that said, it's a solid start to the story arc, with Sonya falling victim to a wizard's curse and incurring the wrath of the wizard's just as unpleasant brother. I'm going to give this one a borrow.
Oh, see, I didn't see a problem with that at all, and I thought Giovanni did great artwork in this one,
Yeah.
bringing a real humanity to all the characters, and I especially loved his work on Sonya's facial expressions.
Sure.
I loved it. I'm giving it a buy.
So there you have it, 3 80s heroes who are still going strong and living life to the full.
Yes, and there are heaps more like Transformers or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that are still just as popular. But which 80s character would you like to be brought back in their own comic series? Oh, perhaps Lone Star.
Or my personal favourite, Mask.
Ah, the Mobile Armoured Strike Command.
Yes, I know they need to realise that Command doesn't start with a K, but their enemies were Venom, the vicious, evil network of mayhem.
Yes.
Now that is a club who know exactly what they're about, and they don't care what you think.
And that is all the 80s goodness we have for you today.
Yes, but be sure to jump onto the comments and let us know what you think the best comics of the 80s were.
Yeah, or do you think that that was a more influential decade? I mean, maybe you're a Silver Age fan.
Either way, thank you for watching and we'll see you next time.
Bye.